Welcome to Dare, the show for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders who dare to shape the future. Your hosts today are Ned Hayes and Cecilia Mariani. Dare is brought to you by Darwaf, the superpower tech team that can make your vision a reality. The Dare podcast is very excited to welcome Sam Rosen with us today. Sam is the co-founder and chief executive officer of DeskPass, which is an industry-leading online marketplace that has unique co-working spaces. He's done a lot of work in lots of different companies. He was the operator of the Co-op, Chicago's first co-working space. He's a respected entrepreneur, and he's founded art collaboration groups as well as design groups. So welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, co-working and being able to work in a variety of locations is kind of a hot topic. So tell us about DeskPass.
Yeah, so DeskPass is a tool and a marketplace that helps connect people and mainly companies with thousands of flexible workspaces available on demand all over the world. So that's anything from, hey, I need a desk for a day, I need a phone booth like this for an hour, to I need a private office for a month or a few days or a few weeks to get my best work done.
Right. And of course, I'll ask the obvious question. Back in the day, we all went to the office, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever. Then COVID happened. Things got upended. So we all know everybody worked at home, and then there's been a tension between return to office and work remote. There's hybrid models in the middle. But I guess on a fundamental level, could you articulate what changed in people's perception of what they had to do for work?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I've been fortunate enough to be thinking about this for a long time, well before the pandemic. And I think there's always been early adopters related to remote work and flexible work, but it was just that, it was the early adopters. And I remember, especially professional service firms like lawyers, I remember very vividly going into lawyers' office trying to pitch our platform, saying, hey, use our platform, give your employees workspaces that are more convenient to where they live. By the way, save a lot of money and everything that our platform does. And these folks would say, well, we'll never do that. This is where our books are. This is where our mentorship lives. This is how we develop our team and create culture. And that was a very hard paradigm to shift. And what fundamentally had changed through COVID was very quickly, companies, small and big, a lot of them that were not prepared, right? Some didn't have the tools, didn't have the frameworks, didn't have the technology, didn't have the culture to support this change, very rapidly iterated and changed. And a few months later realized, oh, wait, actually, this works pretty well. And I don't mind I don't mind not schlepping an hour to the office each way. And turns out I can be just as productive, often more productive, and have better work-life balance. And maybe I was wrong about this whole thing. So it really took a global respiratory pandemic to prove the point. But I think it fundamentally changed the way that companies and businesses think about how their employees can be effective and what the office really means to them.
Right. So let me play devil's advocate for a minute. I've heard some CEOs, especially CEOs at major companies, say things like, well, the hallway conversations or the serendipitous encounters really matter, like the water cooler stuff. What's your response to that?
Frankly, I think that's kind of BS. I think that, look, I'm not anti-office. I think that's what we sell. Offices are critical and they're important and they're part of the solution and they're part of the ecosystem. But this change that's happening was inevitable, right? As technology gets better, as the world evolves, this change was inevitable. And the best companies, the most productive companies, they just solve those problems different ways. There are plenty of opportunities to create culture, to create community, to create water cooler conversations through the tools and tactics and technology that are available today. So I often think that's an excuse. Now, people meeting together, being together, that's critical. That's what we sell. We want you
Right.
to meet together. It just doesn't have to happen all at once, all together at the same place for everybody. And that's the paradigm that I think's fundamentally changing.
Right. And I think one thing that we've seen, quite honestly, is that the work culture that we had previously, maybe for the past 100 years, was really tilted towards, frankly, a male work culture that did not allow for much work-life balance. So, like, I talk to working women who, unfortunately, carry the bulk of interactions with children. Like, often they are the people picking up children. I think guys should step up more, to be clear. But today, the facts are that women carry more of that weight, and working at home or being able to time shift, like, sure, I need to pick up my kid at 2:30 because they weren't feeling well, but then I'm going to work from 4 to 6 to make up for that time. Just being able to time shift a little bit is so much more healthy for a workforce that is more diverse, that is more gender diverse, that has more needs for time shifting. And I think that employers have actually seen, well, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. Tell us about productivity. Like, has productivity gone down when people work remote or work hybrid?
I first just want to stop and say, like, I couldn't have said that better myself. I think, like, you are right. I think you see interviews and studies from people who say, I never liked going to the office. I never liked the year after work, but I felt like I had to do it to protect my career and to advance in my job. And giving me this flexibility actually makes me more productive, gives me a lot less anxiety, and creates more equality and more opportunity for me to be judged on my work and my contribution, not like my popularity in the office or if I go grab drinks with the boys after work, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I think flexible work is a equalizer. Also with location, like hiring. I used to only hire people in Chicago, but now I can hire other people outside of Chicago that wouldn't have necessarily gotten that opportunity without the proximity to the office. So I think you said that so well. In terms of productivity, it's a hard thing to measure, and you will see plenty of articles and stories that say productivity is through the roof and is meaningfully increased by the measure of tasks completed, emails sent, hours worked. And you will also see articles that say the exact opposite. And frankly, it's hard to quantify. Nick Bloom, who's in a lucky position because he was studying remote work pre-pandemic at Stanford, post-pandemic, has a kind of a very interesting set of data that talks about this and kind of thinks about this and looks at this. But at the end of the day, productivity is not driven by the office. Productivity is driven by management and manager and culture, right? And the companies that are finding the best success with productivity are the ones that are managing to the new reality and not trying to force fit what used to work in a kind of monolithic office environment to what the reality of today is. So I think that the delta in productivity is really about managers and management and the folks that are effectively changing through this, and not so much the remote work itself. Look at NVIDIA, look at Atlassian. These are some of the biggest, most innovative companies in the world. Remote culture, right? So to anyone tells me you can't do that, I don't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one thing that you've done, which is interesting at DeskPass too, is you aren't just renting out your standard kind of WeWork office. You're playing with other kinds of spaces. So tell us why, and tell us what kind of spaces you're making available.
So the thing, first of all, every space on DeskPass is a professional, flexible workspace. So it's built for people to get their best work done. And that's, we think, really critical for creating consistency and an environment that's productive. What's cool about DeskPass is, compared to just working with one operator, like a WeWork or a Regis, where you have a smaller network. Those networks tend to be very primary city focused in big cities and big metros. We aggregate and collect lots of different workspaces from all sorts of different operators all across the world. And what that means is not only do we have the big cities covered, but we have mid-sized cities and Main Street covered. And you can find a place that's close to where you live or where your kid goes to school or where you vacation or whatever it might be, that is often a community that was designed and built by someone in that community that's filled with people from that community. So it's not just tapping into a great workspace that might, be better than your home or the office that you typically go to, but it's also this opportunity to connect with other folks that you might not cross paths with in a professional environment that can lead to collaboration, can lead to learning, can lead to not just professionally, but personally. And I
Right.
think that's what we really do is we kind of create this quilt of all sorts of wonderful workspaces that create a quality product and offer them to our customers.
Fantastic. So you're really creating a new type of go to work experience.
Yeah, I think, my thesis, and I don't hold this alone, is really office as an ecosystem, right?
Mm.
I don't think the traditional office setup of the past is going away completely. I think people are going to take less office space, and that office space will probably be more thoughtful and designed more around why do we have this space? What is this space best used for? For some companies, it's meetings. For some meeting companies, it's research. For some companies, it's heads down work. But I think you're going to see companies take less space and it will afford them to create better, more thoughtful and intentional space. And then by saying, hey, you can also work from home. And if home isn't a good place or you need flexibility, we're going to offer a network of spaces like a DeskPass. What you're doing is you're empowering your employees to say, look, I know myself the best, and I know how to organize my life to get to get the work done the best way with the least amount of friction. So it's this shift from one office that everybody goes to many offices that many people go to. And what is right for you might not be right for me in general, today, tomorrow. And it's just giving folks the flexibility that they need, choose their own the adventure.
Right. So one thing that it has shifted as well, I mean, let's be honest about it, over the last, 30, 40 years, is that we now have this constantly online thing where you and I can do an interview online, we can do Slack. I mean, back in 1918, when they had the first pandemic, they had to actually physically send each other letters, right? And now we have this ability to connect asynchronously with people, which makes it feel much more intimate, even if you're in a remote office or if you're right down the street, you can feel like you just talked to the person. So that kind of replaces those kind of water cooler conversations or those funny jokes that you pass on. But I wonder if you could comment at all about any of the shifts that you've seen over your long career in this space in terms of using tools. How have those tools helped or how have those tools hurt?
One insight that I've always thought really, really fascinating is this insight that, look, the office, like you said, it's been around for 100 years. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the origin of an office is the clerk room to a factory, right? And you have this big factory and you have this little clerk room, right? And over time, the factories get smaller, the clerk room gets bigger. The factory goes overseas, and all you're left with is a clerk room. And the paradigm of that hasn't shifted that much. We've been innovating and evolving the office for a very long time. Remote work, it's at the beginning. Like these technologies, these tools, and these tactics are still quite nascent. Think about how much better Zoom got over COVID. Like just that one technology, let alone generative AI and the other tools that are now available to us to get our best work done. So I think like there are all sorts of insane, amazing tools around collaboration, around community, around productivity, but they're still kind of the worst they're ever going to be, right? And there is so much upside in working from remotely and this new paradigm of work because we're still at the beginning of it. Versus like, how much are we going to innovate the traditional office over the next 10, 20 years? Like, I don't know how much different that's going to look compared to what this experience looks like today over the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Because as we talk about things like Apple Vision Pro, and we look at ways to be even more immersive with people who are not physically with us, that need to actually be present might even diminish further, believe it or not, right?
Yeah, I think I love people, and I think it's hard to replace face to face, in person conversation, breaking bread. I mean, but again, it's about how do we be more efficient? How do we really create utilize those experiences when they're really important? Like we have a remote company, we're doing our first physical meetup of all of us together ever in the history of the company. We've been
That's
working together,
amazing.
some of
Yeah.
us for 5, 6 years, and we've never all been in a room together. So, like, is it important for us to get in the room together? I think so. Will it add value to our company and the culture? I think so. But like, we've been pretty effective at growing and scaling the company without ever having to do that. So I think it's additive and it, makes things better, but it's not as needed in the same respect that I think it was considered in the past.
Right, right. It's just fascinating how these tools just keep changing what's possible. Right. Pretty soon we're going to have the holodeck. That's the idea, right?
The Holy Grail.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
I mean, do you
So,
remember like the Cisco like $500,000 boardrooms where like
yes.
in different divisions, and that was the future was you could look at the other side of a boardroom and it was like and that was cost $1 million to implement a company, and now with like
Funny. Yeah.
my iPhone, I can basically recreate the same thing. And like it's incredible the innovation that we've seen, and like we're
Yeah.
still at the beginning of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a big sea change. So I'm curious, you said that you've been working in the space far before DeskPass. So were there differences between DeskPass and like co-op or other co-working spaces that you either founded or helped to run?
Yeah, I mean the very fast origin story for us was you know, came across co-working because working out of an apartment didn't work, and then working from the cafe nearby didn't work much better. And I was like very lucky to kind of come across this idea of co-working about 15 plus years ago.
Wow, that
And
is a
then there were about 300 co-working spaces in the whole world. There are
yeah,
5,000 in the US plus today. There are 30, 40,000 in the world. And I think
yeah,
you're going to see a lot more of those. So I've had a front row seat to see this concept evolve. And the thing that's really cool about these workspaces is they're all different and they're all a flavor of the owner, the operator, the community, and it's wonderful, right? It's like going to a restaurant, and every restaurant's a little bit different because of the choices that they make. For me, when we started, we had the first co-working space in Chicago, right? So there were no other options. And fast forward today, within 1 square mile of where we opened our first location, there's a dozen, right? So I think that's what you're seeing is you're just seeing a phenomenal proliferation of these spaces, and where the kind of first edition and first few cohorts were people that believed in a concept would lease space, a traditional lease with a landlord, and
yeah,
basically arbitrage it to sell it to other people. As time evolved, landlords and building owners, the validation of the concept became clear. So most operators have these management agreements, meaning they're partners with the landlord and they share in the upside with the landlord, and they have less of the downside of like a traditional lease, right? And now you're seeing building owners that are have record non-occupancy in their buildings, recognizing that if I want to have a building of the future, part of it has to be flexible. It can't be just the same old thing. And they're starting to build their own brands and actually integrate this into the ownership of the building and build it, which is phenomenally interesting. So
Right.
we like all three of those models, but I think as the office changes and there's less people going to the traditional office every day, you will continue to see a proliferation of lots of different workspaces. Some of them, a lot of them in the suburbs, a lot of niche spaces like, hey, in crypto. This is a space for folks that are really into crypto.
Mhm.
I'm a female entrepreneur. This space is really focused around female entrepreneurs and offering a niche experience that's really tailored to a specific community that can help each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So you did not start your career actually in the co-working space. You started in design agencies and brand agencies. So what led you from that type of work into exploring co-working and helping to run those types of places?
Yeah, so my background is really design and brand and technology. And that's been the lens that I've looked at things for my career because of happenstance and wandering across a co-working space really early and saying, who's doing this in Chicago? And
Yeah.
realizing there was nobody, I began to think about real estate and the world of work in the office, which was not something that I ever anticipated. And I actually think most folks that are in real estate, especially office, they're finance people, they're
Mm.
real estate people. They're thinking about things in a really a financially minded perspective often, right? Like if you think about the underpinnings of the office, I rent a space, right? I have a landlord. That landlord's financing that with a bank, right? That bank is probably, connected. It's connected to like the global financial system, right? Like pensions and retirements are very much a portion of that is office and real estate, right? So that's the paradigm that I think most people have had historically related to the office. I like thinking about people. I like thinking about, what's your day look like today? Like, how did, from waking up in the morning to getting in the car and that whole human experience that brought you to the office, and how is that experience designed and the technology and tools that enable that? And so, from the moment I started looking at this, I became really fascinated for two reasons. One is I don't think the office experience was really centered around the employee. It was never really centered around Ned and what's Ned's deal today. It was
Yeah.
more driven around Ned's boss and if
What
he
the boss
moves
wanted.
or she
Yeah.
moves, yeah, they move to the suburbs. Maybe everyone's moving their office, their commute to the suburbs every day, right? And it was more around that than everyone's unique individual experience. That doesn't seem intuitive to me, and that seemed like something that was inevitably going to change. And the other thing, which I think 15 years later now is becoming really clear, is these giant offices, this humongous asset class, one of the biggest in the world of office space, it's always been pretty empty. Now,
Mm.
maybe by the traditional measure of a lease, like less empty, but a lease doesn't, first of all, still pretty empty. If 20% of all the buildings are empty, like that's a lot of empty space, a lot of empty space. But at the end of the day, the thing that mattered to me the most, and I still think about it, is utilization. Like how effective I am in that office when I'm sitting in my desk or in a meeting and getting the work done. And
Right.
that has always been so inefficient and so underutilized that I've just been really fascinated with that problem and the opportunity to create these experiences that are much more around creating spaces that can be efficiently utilized because they're great and people love them and they want to be there.
Right. Right. And wanting to create a positive experience, what you're really speaking about is the idea that maybe we should enjoy our work.
Yeah, enjoy our life. Maybe we should better have the capacity to interweave work and life in a way where it's not, here's my work and here's my life. But if I need to, your point earlier, if I need to pick up my daughter from daycare, or need to go to a doctor's appointment, or I just want to sit on a yard with my wife for a few hours, that I can do that. And you can trust that I'm still going to get my work done and still going to be a great employee, and we're going to be productive together.
Right, right. Okay, so a couple quick questions. Recently, a DeskPass actually merged with another company, right? So you're now in 200 markets. I think this just happened, in February?
Yeah, it ended. We closed it in October. We announced it earlier this year. We were able to join forces and with a company called Breather, which was a really fantastic, interesting company and brand that was created about 10 years ago that sold on-demand meeting rooms. And Breather was owned by Industrious, which is one of the largest and very best operators of these workspaces in the world. And we were able to join forces with Breather to create a network and a product and a platform that's bigger and better, and what we think is an industry-leading partnership with also one of the best operators in the space as well.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So that gives you really scale. You're able to be in a number of different places. And can I, as a member, transition from, say, Chicago to Philadelphia to Seattle and be able to use a space that you provide?
Yeah, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of spaces, tens of thousands of bookable like desks and meeting rooms and offices. We're in 220 cities. We're in 19 countries. And you can find all those spaces, book all those spaces. And then when you get there, know how to get in the door, where the bathroom is, how to get on the internet and all those spaces through our platform. And the thing that we sell, which I think is really neat, is to companies, right? So we'll sell to a company this platform for their employees. That's a branded experience. So as an employer, I can go to my employees and say, you don't have to, especially if we don't have an office near you or the office that we have isn't appropriate for you. Here is a network of spaces, a menu of options while you travel, when you're at home, when you have a meeting with a client, and you are welcome to use them. And we're happy to pay for them because we believe it's going to be good for you. And by the way, it's a lot less expensive for us to book that space when you're going to use it that day, rather than have this empty office sitting downtown that you're not going to.
Right, right. And what's fascinating about your work, too, is that you've been able to really nurture the careers of some notable entrepreneurs. Like, I think I read somewhere that Ryan Graves, who was CEO for Uber, was one of your early customers.
Oh, man, that's some good research, man. Yeah, the Coop, which was our original space, was a really special place. And some of the initial folks in that room were Ryan, were my buddy Charles Adler, who was the partner and creative director of Kickstarter, like really cool, wonderful humans. Spikeball Chris, the guy who started Spikeball, if you've heard of it, was out of the Coop, and a lot of other people that you might not know their name, but are just as interesting and impressive. And yeah, it's been really fun to see that. And I think that's a testament to co-working, right? Because I wouldn't have met those people. I wouldn't have had connections and built relationships with them unless we had this shared space together. We all have different careers. We're all in different industries. We all do different things, right? So the fact that this work gathering space was the connective tissue that brought us together and got to, explore that is, I think, a testament to the power of these spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's going back to the idea of hallway conversations or synergy that happens, I think putting like-minded people together, especially if they're informal or colleagues who just come together because they're excited about something, is much more interesting than putting my desk next to a finance guy who has to focus when my life is filled with meetings. Like, we don't have much to talk about. It's not like we're going to come up with good ideas. But if you put me next to someone who's in an adjacent industry, who is doing the same sort of work, we're going to feed off each other. And maybe if I go to another city, I feed off somebody else, and we both like nurture each other. Yeah.
I love that. I like to think if you go to the same place every day with the same people every day and do the same thing every day, you're not going to get a lot of new thoughts, new ideas, right? If you go to an environment with different people, with different backgrounds, with different interests and different specialties, you might learn some new things. Some of
Right.
those things might be applicable to your personal life. Some of those things might be applicable to your professional. Sometimes hearing how somebody else is solving a problem or something that they've learned gives you a little nugget that you can apply to your life and your job and your business. And I think it's beautiful that diversity of idea, people,
That
that
create
creates like a fertile ground for new stuff rather than like we are always here, all the same people, same thing, you know? And that's one of the things I really love about these environments.
Yeah. So going back to you for a second, Sam, you started a brand company, you did design work, and one of your companies is still going there, right?
Yeah, we have an agency here in Chicago. We do work all across the globe called One Design Company. One Design Company, we call it a digital branding agency, but we help companies like create powerful brands, unique brands, and execute those brands across lots of different platforms. And I have wonderful partners and play, more of a advisor, work on strategic initiatives role. But the agency is really incredible and does wonderful work across industry all over the world.
Mm. And I'm just curious, what did you learn from building those companies as an entrepreneur? I know that's a big topic. We could go for a couple hours, but do you have 3 to 5 takeaways that might be helpful for the startup entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'll focus on like folks that are at the beginning of trying to start something new.
Mhm.
I think the notion of starting something new, starting a business can feel really daunting and can feel really risky. And I have the privilege of getting started really early and having a very supportive family and kind of financial security to do all this. But I think what folks often do is it's like trying to climb Everest and looking up at the top of the mountain and thinking like I have to get from here to there. Versus
Mm.
I think any experienced climber would say one foot in front of the other, right? And for
Right.
me, it's always been I like the beginning. I like learning new things, but it's how do you break down these audacious goals into singular small steps, one at a time, where it's achievable, where you can learn, where you can look up, you can look down, and you can feel comfortable. But the trap that I find people create for themselves is just this perception that they have to go from there to the top of the mountain in one fall swoop and not in little bites, little chunks, little learning. The worst thing that happens is you fail, and if you fail, you probably learn a lot of things, and that probably actually makes you more equipped for the work you were doing before. So I am a big entrepreneur whisperer, and I really like supporting people and saying, take the risk, learn a little bit. You learn a lot about yourself and your community, and maybe you can build something successful.
Right. And one thing that I've seen that's really interesting is with all of the tools that we have today, you don't have to spend $1 million to pay a dev team to get a basic website and get a no-code solution up and start getting customer interest. You can do a lot of this bootstrapping before you ever really write code, which was not the case 10 years ago. Wasn't even the case really 5 years ago to the extent we have it today. So you've been through that
yeah.
time. Can you share more with us what you've learned there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're such at an interesting time related to that. I think when I started the agency, everyone older than me didn't grow up with an iPhone. Everyone younger than me did. And I was in a fortunate position to kind of be like a translator between the two. And that's where I created a lot of opportunity for myself. But again, before work and effort and resources required before that were an order of magnitude harder to access, more expensive than they were. for like so far in my career. And I think we're at a paradigm now where you're going to see that happen again with what's happening with generative AI and the tools that are becoming available to us. I mean, there was a podcast with Sam Altman who said, I'm waiting to see, we have a bet with my founder buddies, which is when is the first founder going to have $1 billion one person company?
Right.
And the ability to do work, the tools, the knowledge that is accessible to you through one or two apps today are so amazing and so incredible. And as a dad, I can't wait to how that influences me in my life and my career. I'm really excited when I think of my 5 and 7-year-old and what power they're going to have available to them and resources at such a low cost. Like, I think it's impossible to comprehend. So I think we're at that kind of moment again where the whole game's changing and the opposite, making the playing field like even more level.
Right. It really opens it up that anyone, anywhere in the world can build value for customers and can build something that is unique without having to get access to a specialized code base or a specialized company or even a specialized office in our case, right? So fantastic. Well, Sam, it's been such a pleasure talking with you and hearing about your vision. I have one last question, which is, what do you dare to dream? What world are you creating, Sam?
I think it goes back to this design background, which is, what I see and what I hope for is this world where people get to design the optimal work-life experience and balance that works for them where they are in their life. And they don't have to do the same old thing and go to the same old office with the same old people, but they can create a life and an environment where they get their best work done, but they can also be happy and be productive and be a good mom or a good dad or whatever you want to be. But I hope that that's where we're going. And I think from where we started to where we are now, we're making some good progress, but we certainly have a lot of work to do.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Sam. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I wish you the best of luck on your journey.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks to our guests today for their great insights on Dare, the podcast for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders. If you'd like your story to be featured on Dare, just contact us at info@darwaft.com. Dare is brought to you by Darwaft, the tech team that can make your vision a reality.